Israeli Special Operations Forces just eliminated one of Hamas's top commanders in Jenin, in Judea and Samaria. And predictably, the media already starting to lose its mind and bend the narrative. But here's the reality. This was a textbook counterterrorism operation. Isser Sa'adi was a high-ranking Hamas leader actively planning attacks against civilians. The IDF didn't wait for the next massacre. They took him out before he could kill innocent Israelis. But of course, the media is not going to tell you that. Instead, they're going to start screaming about escalation, the cycle of violence, and all the other anti-Israel propaganda we've come to expect. We're all getting used to the garbage. Now, in this episode, I'm going to break down exactly how the Border Patrol's Hamas, or Yechidat Mistaravim, Special Operations Unit, along with the IDF, executed this operation with surgical precision, why Hamas is using civilians as human shields, again, particularly in this neighborhood, and how the old Biden-era policies have enabled this terrorism buildup, and what happens next. So I want to start with, this wasn't some random raid. This is a highly coordinated special operations mission planned down to the last detail. The Israeli Border Police's Hamas, or Yechidat Mistaravim, Special Operations Unit with the IDF, entered Jenin in 8-ton armored vehicles backed by precise intelligence from the Shin Bet, Israel's intelligence agency. They'd pinpointed Sa'adi's exact hideout, and once they moved in, there was no escape. The building was locked down, completely sealed off, and special operations made entry quickly and methodically. And Sa'adi wasn't alone. He had 2 gunmen inside with him. And when Israeli Special Operations Forces breached, they opened fire on them, and the IDF's response was immediate. Both terror leaders were neutralized on the spot. And when the dust settled, 3 Hamas operatives, leaders, were taken alive for intelligence extraction. The IDF and the Hamas recovered an M16, a pistol, and explosives inside the building. And that's proof of intent. These guys weren't just sitting around. They weren't just online preaching free Palestine. They were armed, ready, and planning their next attack. And the IDF didn't use airstrikes here. They didn't level the building. They sent operators in on foot to take out the threat and minimize collateral damage. And that's the difference between Israel and Hamas. Hamas intentionally hides in civilian areas, hoping their own people will be killed so that they can push their propaganda. The IDF doesn't play that game. This was clean, precise. So I want to talk about Jenin a little bit more as a terror hub. And I want to be clear about what happened. Jenin isn't some refugee camp. That narrative has been gone for 30 years. This is a Hamas stronghold, completely built out here. The Palestinian Authority has lost control of the area. And Hamas and Islamic Jihad are stockpiling and have been stockpiling weapons there and recruiting new operatives, terrorist operatives, and training for the next wave of attacks against civilians. And Israel isn't waiting around to see what happens. The IDF's been running operations all month, major counter-terror offensive. And in February alone, they neutralized 25 terrorists. They arrested 350 more, confiscated 120 illegal weapons and firearms and explosives, and destroyed hundreds of explosives. And that's not escalation, that's law enforcement. These aren't freedom fighters. They're death squads funded by Iran, armed to the teeth, and operating out of civilian areas that allows them to hide between women and children. And the only reason they're still in business is because the world allows them to be. The UN covers for them. The media runs defense for them. This episode of the Aaron Cohen Show is brought to you by Merkava Coffee. This is the official coffee of the Aaron Cohen Show. And when I served in the IDF, coffee wasn't just coffee, it was fuel. And in the special operations world, there were nights with no sleep, missions that stretched for days, and no room for mistakes. Coffee was serious, and it kept us sharp, locked in, and ready to move. And let me tell you something, I still take it seriously. And that's why Merkava Coffee, strong, no nonsense, battle tested, no fluff, no gimmicks, just good, bold coffee for the people who need to be at their best. And if you start your day like I do, like it's a mission, you know why this matters. Hit the link down in the description and grab yourself a triple order and help keep the lights on and support the Aaron Cohen Show. Appreciate you guys. And the so-called human rights organizations continue to treat them like victims instead of the killers that they are. And Israel has to go into places like Jenin because nobody else will. Now I want to hit the media lies a little bit deeper. So right on cue, the media is already running interference for Hamas. That's what they do. They're not calling Sa'adi a terrorist. They're calling him an armed Palestinian fighter. Google it. They're saying there was an escalation by Israel as if eliminating a known terrorist, planning an attack as some type of provocation. Go have a look at CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera. All their headlines are going to look the exact same. Israeli forces raid Jenin. 3 Palestinians killed. 0 mention of Hamas. No mention of these guys being armed. 0 mention of the explosives in the building. The bias is blatant, and at this point it's become laughable. And these same outlets refuse to cover Hamas terror infrastructure. They won't get into it. They won't show you the footage of Hamas firing rockets from inside these apartment buildings. Tiny bit of footage out there on this, but not much. They won't report on Hamas leadership bragging about using civilians as human shields. They're definitely not going to tell you that every time Israel eliminates a terrorist, it prevents future massacres. That's the only narrative that matters, by the way. Every terrorist killed prevents another terror attack. And who knows how many more. And the worst part, the American and European media know exactly what they're doing. Don't be fooled here. This isn't ignorance. This is like willful manipulation. Every time they twist these stories, they're just emboldening Hamas to keep hiding behind those civilians and keep pushing the lie that Israel is the aggressor. Guess what? In Arabic, Hebrew, halas, it's enough. Everybody's onto this garbage. And here I just get to reinforce it and give you guys the facts about the operation. If this is any other country, trust me, this would be called counterterrorism. And whenever Israel takes out a high-value terrorist, Hamas has a choice. Do they escalate? Do they launch rockets from Gaza? Do they push their terror cells in the West Bank to carry out more shootings? Or do they keep their heads down and regroup? And so here's what I think. Here's where I'm at. I think Hamas is watching to see how Israel reacts. If the IDF keeps hitting their terror networks hard, the harder they hit them, the more they're going to think twice before launching anything major out of the West Bank. So Israel is setting that baseline right now with aggression. But if the international community starts pressuring Israel to de-escalate in the West Bank, guess what? Hamas will see that as a green light to attack or to continue further attacks. We've seen all these knife attacks. All the attacks that have been happening are coming out of the West Bank right now. And then there's Iran. Every terror operation Hamas carries out, remember, bankrolled by Tehran. The weapons, the training, the logistics, none of it happens without Iran's backing. The question now is whether Iran uses this as an excuse to bring Hezbollah into the action up in the north again, but they may have been thumped too hard. And then we've got Syria. We're going to see what happens with HTS. They're starting to get a little emboldened as well, but we've got the Druze starting to pop up saying, hey, we're with Israel on this one. And so Israel isn't looking for a war, but Hamas is on its last bastion, its last stand here, and we'll see what happens in the West Bank and if they keep putting out the word for the West Bank operatives to continue to escalate. I can tell you for sure that would be a mistake. And so under Biden, Israel had to deal with a lot of weak U.S. administration that was trying to balance its approach to the Middle East. And they were holding back weapons shipments, freezing military aid, reopening negotiations with Iran. They gave Iran billions of dollars over the last 4 years. Every one of those moves made Hamas stronger. It enabled October 7th. And with Trump back in office, we've seen what's happening. The White House stance has completely shifted. Trump has got Israel's back. Weapons have already been shipped over. He's made it clear Israel is going to defend itself. It's up to Bibi now. The fact is that Bibi has now got the green light to be able to do what he needs to do. And now it's about getting hostages back and going back into Gaza as needed. And now we've just seen Bibi cut that power off. And it's about time, because no country in the world has any responsibility to support its enemies. So if you're sick of the media lies, do me a favor, share the episode. Post a fact about this operation today. Tag someone who needs to hear it. And if you stand with Israel, it's time to be loud. Now's the time. Because the fight just isn't on the battlefield here. It's in the media. It's in politics. And it's on social media. And it's about standing with the truth. I want to thank you guys for watching this one. Going to come back to these operations as they continue to unfold. We're going to see more counterterrorism operations in the West Bank. This is another completely dangerous area that Israel is very closely monitoring. And all the operations they've been conducting there are for good reason. They want to get ahead of this threat before it can metastasize. But I'm going to come back to this as more of these special operations in the West Bank continue to unfold. Do me a favor, if you guys support the show, hit the link down in the description. Grab yourself a bag of Merkava coffee. It's the official coffee of the Aaron Cohen Show. Every bag sold helps support the show and keep the lights on in the studio, and allows me to keep combating that garbage anti-Israel misinformation and propaganda out there. And this coffee tastes incredible. I promise you it'll turn the lights on if you're mission focused like me and you need a strong jolt in the morning to start your day. Hit the link down in the description and grab yourself a 3-pack and help support the Aaron Cohen Show. I appreciate you guys. I'm going to come back to these as more of these ops unfold. I want to thank you guys for watching this one. I'm Aaron Cohen. You're watching the Aaron Cohen Show, and I will catch you guys on the next one.